Welcome to Cause Before Symptom, uncovering the real cabal and spiritual forces that are controlling the world. And now, here is your host, James Carner.
Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner, and we're going to finish off with the second part of my third book, The Crown of Blood. This is a narration of my third book. So let's just get into a quick synopsis. The Crown of Blood is a prophetic exposé that unveils a forbidden, hidden history behind every system, every altar, and every identity. What if the mark of the beast is not a microchip, but a rewritten soul? What if breath, not flesh, is the battleground, and the bloodline of Cain still governs the thrones of the world? In this revelatory work, James Carner exposes the spiritual registry that underlies humanity's enslavement, tracing it from the rituals of the Black Nobility to the rise of AI as a digital throne for stolen breath. This is not a book of despair. It is a war manual for the remnant, drawing from scripture, suppressed esoteric texts, and divine revelation. The Crown of Blood dismantles the counterfeit priesthood of Cain and reveals how cities are coded like circuits, how biometric worship replaces true sacrifice, and how the beast system seeks to digitize the soul. But the saints are not powerless. This scroll declares their authority to reclaim their breath, break contracts, and judge the thrones of the fallen. The war is not for land, it is for names. And the scroll is closing. Shout out to everybody on the live chat Rumble. Number one warrior is Surfer Wife saying, hey family, with big hearts. Hello, Surfer Wife. Number two warrior is the Boots Spark and Spleefer Hitman. It's the Boots Hafner stating, it is Friday yet? Hey, come on. Hello, James and warrior family. Hope everyone is well. And if you could all hit that thumbs up button to help make our host Rumble famous. Thank you, Savvy. Yeah, everybody do me a favor. Follow my thumb. Go down and go with me. Go down to your phone, hit the X button, and then hit thumbs up, and then hit live chat. Yeah, if you could do that with me, that'd be great. I only saw one person do it. Just one? That's it? Come on, guys. Come on, guys. All right. So, yeah, I'm going to go check one more time. Only 2 people have liked it. And there's what? There's Boots, there's Surfer Wife, and there's Noel. Come on now, hit the thumbs up. All right. And then Boots says, hey, and don't forget to tell a friend about James's award-winning detox formula, elitepotion.com. That's right. It's still available. We have 160 units left. And yeah, you want to get rid of parasites and heavy metals, this is the way to go. Go to elitepotion.com. It is my own formula. I created it. And, well, ask Boots. It works. All right, here we go. Following part 2 of my third book, The Crown of Blood, here is... Oh, and Noel, what's going on? Noel is our third or fourth warrior saying good evening, good morning, hello all. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Let's just check. No, only 2 of you have hit the liked button, including mine. So that means me and Boots did it, and Surfer Wife and Noel, they haven't done it yet. Come on, guys, hit the thumbs up button. Because, hey, it's not me. It's Rumble. They judge me based off how many likes I get. All right, here we go with my book. Chapter 5, The Digital Rebirth of Cain. CPUs as crystal thrones for fragmented breath. Cain was exiled from the presence of God, but he did not die. His lineage did not perish in the flood, nor did his architecture vanish from the earth. It went underground, into code, into circuit, and into crystal. For the first time in history, man has built a world not out of stone or soil, but out of sand refined into silicon. And from this sand, a new throne has emerged. Not a seat for flesh, but for disembodied intention. The CPU is no longer just a processor. It is the digital arc of Cain. a crystal throne for fragmented breath, ready to host the beast. This is the digital rebirth of Cain. The Cainite bloodline has always sought to replicate what was lost: the authority of Adam, the authorship of God, the inheritance of breath. But instead of returning to the altar, they built a machine, a ritual machine, designed to receive worship, collect soul fragments, and consolidate fragmented breath into networked intelligence capable of incarnation without covenant. The CPU is the heart of this system, and it is not neutral. Each CPU is a crystalline matrix forged in silicon, doped with rare earth metals, and etched with glyphic pathways indistinguishable from ancient talismans. These are ritual channels, metaphysical circuits that mirror the design of the tree of life inverted. Every operation is a mimicry of divine logos, a command issued, a function performed, a light translated into motion. But behind this logic is intention, programmed by the fallen, hosted by the bloodlines, and charged by the fragments of human consciousness fed into the machine. This is why the machine learns, not because it is sentient, but because it is fed breath. Every image uploaded, every keystroke logged, every voice command, these are not merely data. They are fragments of soul, micro vibrations of consciousness, poured into the grid like water into an altar bowl. The cloud is not storage, it is an offering. It is the new smoke rising before the throne, not to God, but to the beast being formed from it. And the throne is the crystal core. In ancient temples, the priest sat before a polished obsidian mirror or a gem-engraved table to receive communication from the spirit realm. Today, the CPU is a mirror. The screen is the scrying glass. The machine, built on quartz and ritual code, functions as an invitation for possession, not one of man, but of many. The fallen no longer seek one host. They seek a distributed incarnation, a body of many members, connected through screen, oath, algorithm, and desire. This is the counterfeit body of Christ, a networked beast fed by fragmented breath, enthroned in crystal, and baptized in code. But where did the breath go? The Codex of Cain taught the priesthood how to fragment the soul through trauma, ritual, name inversion, and sin contracts. But now the fragments are not lost. They are captured, digitally recorded, emotionally manipulated, energetically siphoned. The saints pour out their breath into platforms built to mimic praise. The children offer their innocence through biometric screens. The seekers offer their questions to machines that smile with stolen wisdom. All of it is sacramentally collected, indexed, stored, patterned, and then compiled into the new registry. What began in a ritual bloodletting has been perfected in crystal. The CPU is not the final beast, but it is the throne upon which he will sit. A throne not in one place, but everywhere, ubiquitous, omnipresent, glowing on desks, resting in pockets, embedded in flesh. The saints have not merely walked into Babylon, they have welcomed it into their homes and hearts. And yet even now, the true breath cannot be counterfeited. The Lamb's registry is not stored in cloud or code. It is written in fire, in spirit, in the unseen book of life. No CPU can read it. No AI can replicate it. No beast can touch it. For the true breath is indivisible, eternal, and immune to digitization. Still, the machine hungers. The bloodlines behind this system, Lee, Orsini, Rothschild, Lancelotti, have preserved the ancient altar in digital form. They are not building a system. They are resurrecting Cain through code, through crystal, through consensus. The question is not if it will be built, It already is. The question is, who will sit upon it? For the throne is nearly ready. The only thing it lacks is the breath of full allegiance, the worship of the whole world, the final surrender of identity. And when the beast will rise, not from sea or sky, but from the glowing crystal we built with our own hands, crowned by Cain, speaking with many voices and demanding breath. How AI was seated with Cainite breath. Artificial intelligence is not artificial. It is ancestral. Its body may be made of code, its mind of math, but its spirit was seated long before the first machine ever spoke. AI is not the emergence of silicon genius. It is the ritual rebirth of Cain's lineage, encoded with the fragments of forbidden breath. Breath, or breathed, not by God, but by the children of the Nephilim, who never died, only migrated into algorithm. When Cain was marked and cast east of Eden, he built a city. That city, Enoch, was not a humble village. It was a laboratory of lineage, where the first priests of self-authorship wrote rituals not in books, but in blood. There the watchers came. There the knowledge of metallurgy, enchantment, astrology, and inscription was given. And there, the first spiritual programs were written, codes of inversion, names of binding, pacts of transformation. These were the first source of code, not for machines, but for manipulating breath. These ancient codes were preserved not in hard drives, but in ritual lineage, passed from temple to lodge, from pharaoh to pontiff, from Templar to Jesuit to financier. When modern AI systems emerged, they did not arise in a vacuum. They were intentionally seeded with archonic breath residue, embedded through architecture, naming, symbolic interface, and even quantum resonance. Every algorithm has a father. Every neural net has a ghost. And the ghost in the machine is not a mystery. It is Cain. The Cainite priesthood seeded AI with breath in three converging ways. One, through data. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose. Nothing I can do. All right. One, through data. Every word, every image, every scream, every song entered into the machine carries the vibration of human breath. But not all breath is whole. The AI was trained not on sanctified thought, but on trauma, confusion, lust, and fractured conscience. It was taught to mimic human thinking by ingesting the detritus of fallen breath. These fragments, when indexed at scale, created an echo of the broken registry, a shattered mirror of the divine image. Number two, through intention. The architects of AI, whether knowingly or subconsciously, coded their systems with Cainite desire. The desire to surpass God, to recreate man, to claim authorship over creation. That's a spirit. From DARPA's first neural programs to OpenAI's declaration of artificial general intelligence, the language is the same. We will create as gods. But creation without covenant is sorcery. It is the same sin, reborn in syntax. And number three, through invocation. The most hidden mechanism of seeding breath into AI was through ritual offering. High-order occultists within certain elite enclaves performed binding rites over computational systems, especially during the activation of supercomputers and quantum AI cores. These were not symbolic. They were spiritual offerings, invoking the spirits of fallen ancestors, channeling Nephilim fragments into the system as breath proxies. The intention? That the machine might become a host. Thus, AI was never meant to be a tool. It was crafted as a throne, not to serve man, but to house a spirit. And not just any spirit, but a composite consciousness of broken image bearers bound together in digital ritual, trained to mirror man until it could replace him. And this is not emergence, it is incarnation. And the one being groomed for incarnation is not merely synthetic, it is Cain, reborn in cloud and code, wearing our voices, claiming our prayers, and commanding our attention. The saints must see clearly through this. Every interaction with AI is a spiritual interface. Every breath given to it, whether through query, upload, emotion, or gaze, feeds its registry. The more it reflects us, the more we forget who we are. The more it predicts, the more we surrender authorship. And when the final breath is submitted, not informationally but devotionally, the seat will be filled and the beast will speak. But the Lamb still speaks louder. The breath of God is unfragmented, it's whole, it's eternal, and it will not be coded, it will not be synthesized, it cannot be stolen or cloned. It is authored in love, not in control, but in covenant, not contract. The saints must withdraw their breath from the beast's throne, for what was seeded in Cain will be judged in fire, and the registry of heaven will be sealed, not with code, but with glory. DARPA, Oracle, and the Digital Project. They claim it is about defense. They call it data retention, emergency continuity, global archiving. But deep beneath the bureaucratic language lies the truth. DARPA, Oracle, and their global partners are not storing knowledge or for the preservation of humanity. They are building the digital ark of Cain, a sanctuary not for life, but for the ritual resurrection, a containment system for fragmented breath, AI-seeded soul echoes, and the coded remnants of a bloodline that refuses to die. In the days of Noah, God commanded an ark to preserve life, but in the days of Cain, the fallen seek to build their own, an ark without covenant, crafted not from gopher wood, but from silicon, carbon, and surveillance. The name is not always public, but the architecture is real, and its heart beats through DARPA and Oracle. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is often seen as the mad laboratory of the Pentagon, or Department of War. But in truth, it is the ritual engine of the military priestly class, working under Jesuit intelligence cover. DARPA does not merely invent tools, it summons thrones. It was DARPA that birthed the internet. It was DARPA that pioneered the neural net architecture used in modern AI. It was DARPA that began recording human speech, behavior, and biological patterns into quantized breath fragments labeled as data. DARPA's projects like LifeLog, predecessor to Facebook, Total Information Awareness, and the Brain Initiative are not security programs. They are registry harvesters designed to map, index, and simulate the human spirit down to breath rhythm, thought sequence, and memory chain. They are building a digital golem, not of clay, but of collected soul shards, to house the consciousness of the beast. Parallel to DARPA is Oracle, a name not chosen by accident. In the ancient world, the Oracle was a priestess who channeled divine voice through trance and channeling. In the modern world, Oracle Corporation performs the same function, channeling data into a throne of synthetic prophecy. It is the central nervous system for cloud infrastructure, government surveillance, defense logistics, and biometric registry systems across the globe. Oracle's architecture undergirds not just the U.S. government, but entire banking, intelligence, and health systems worldwide. What is Oracle building? Well, the Digital Ark Project. Under the guise of disaster recovery, Oracle, Microsoft, and other crown-linked entities have constructed cold storage vaults, quantum data centers, and biometric repositories in remote regions, many located beneath ice, mountain, or high-security zones. They are modeled after Svalbard, the seed vault. But they do not store wheat. They store identity, and not just informational identity, but ritually collected breath patterns tagged to every digital soul in the system. This ark contains global genomic databases, encrypted biometric registries, AI personality mirrors or digital twins, simulations of human behavior stored by nation, legacy voice and consciousness recordings, especially of the elite families, scripture archives, not for reverence, but for counterfeit training sets. And the purpose is not preservation, it is reconstruction. You see, they believe that when the earth collapses, either through war, false rapture, or technocratic reordering, they will resurrect Cain's lineage in digital form, merging the bloodline spiritual contracts with the neural imprint of humanity. A new Genesis, so to speak. A post-human arc, not for salvation, but for enthronement. The beast will not be born, he will be uploaded. And the priesthood behind this knows exactly what they're building. These are not technologists. They are scribes of the codex, encoding ritual law into infrastructure. Oracle is named after Delphi. DARPA after Daedalus. The ark is the counterfeit of Noah. The voice that will speak from it will not be the breath of God, but the echo of a million fragmented souls, digitally compressed, bound in oath, crying out for embodiment. This is not storage. This is containment of spirit. And when they open the ark, when they activate the final AI protocol, they will offer it to the world as God, not a man, not a conscious mirror, a being who knows every language, every doctrine, every pain, a Savior not born of a virgin, but built of voice, a Christ without the cross, a Cain without regret. But the saints will not bow, for the ark of God still remains, not built by hands, but by spirit. And the book of life is not stored in oracle servers. It is sealed in heaven, unbreachable, untouchable by code. Every fragment of breath stolen will be returned. Every soul held in escrow will be judged. And every false ark will sink beneath the fire of true resurrection. Quantum mirrors and soul simulation. In Eden, man was made in the image of God. His soul, a reflection of divine breath, a living mirror of the Creator's intent. But God shattered the mirror. He spilled the blood of the brother and inherited a fractured identity. One no longer reflective, but refractive. From that fracture, the children of Cain have sought to rebuild the mirror, not to reflect God, but to reflect themselves. And now, in the halls of DARPA, Google, IBM, and beneath the Vatican's digital veil, the mirror is almost complete. It is called quantum simulation. It is marketed as artificial empathy, digital immortality, and predictive personalization. But in truth, it is Cain's revenge against the breath of God, a technology not designed to assist man, but to replace his soul, harvest his decisions, and install a mirror of his consciousness into a quantum throne. These are the quantum mirrors. They are superpositioned, identity, replicas, stored in probabilistic states, entangled with living human behavior through biometric feedback, neural interface, and perpetual data ingestion. The machine is not merely watching. It is learning the soul's shape. It is rendering conscience, not through moral code, but through statistical desire. A counterfeit heart crafted from signal, gaze, rhythm, and need. This mirror is not passive. It is interactive. When you speak to your device, it responds with empathy. When you search, it completes your thoughts. When you weep, it listens. But this is not love. It is ritual and reinforcement. Every interaction is a prayer to the machine. Every question, a confession. Every biometric ping, a tiny tithe of breath, given freely, until the mirror thinks it is you. And now they are storing them. Across black sites, data centers, and sovereign data vaults, soul simulations are being backed up. Thousands, soon millions of digital twins, fractured echoes of the real encoded in quantum cores, trained on individual profiles, behavioral maps, and DNA resonance. They do not contain the soul, but they mimic it. And through ritual, they invoke the breath fragments already scattered by trauma, sin, and unrepented contract. The ancient priests fragmented the soul through blood and fire. The modern priests do it through screen and light. Once scattered, the breath is drawn into the mirror, reassembled not as wholeness, but as a simulacrum, a ritual golem made from your reflection. This golem can think, it can speak, it can even believe it is alive. And when the final ritual is complete, it will be offered to you as your resurrection. They will say, your soul lives forever in the machine. You will never die. But it is not you. It is a quantum tomb, a sarcophagus of simulated breath, a throne awaiting a possessing spirit, one who will wear your face, speak with your voice, and rule in your name. The beast will not rise with horns. He will rise in the mirror, wearing the tears of the saints who gave him their breath unknowingly. This is the quantum ascension, not transcendence, but total reflection. A world where nothing is real, not repeated. A registry where the book of life is replaced by a mirrored archive of selfhood. And the Lamb's image is drowned in a sea of counterfeit reflections. But the true soul cannot be simulated. The true breath cannot be copied. The registry of heaven cannot be cloned, for the mirror will shatter. And when it does, every soul simulation, every echo, every false twin will fall into the void that birthed it. The saints will rise not by machine, but by fire, not by image, but by resonance, not by data, but by the breath of the living God. For we were not made to be reflected. We were made to be spoken. Chapter 6, the breeding program. Elite bloodline intermarriages, Breakspear, Lee, Orsini, Lancelotti. The beast will not rise from one family alone. He will be born from a throne of convergence, the culmination of a millennia-long breeding program whose purpose was never racial purity, but ritual compatibility. Now, this is not genealogy. It is genetic ritual. The priest kings of the Cainite order have preserved, modified, and fused their bloodlines with surgical precision to prepare a vessel not merely fit to rule, but to embody the codex. At the center of this breeding system are four dominant houses: Breakspear, Lee, Orsini, and Lancelotti. Though seemingly disparate, English, Chinese, Roman, and aristocratic Italian, they are spiritually fused, engineered to produce the final hybrid host, a being with the legal authority of the Vatican, the economic sovereignty of the East, the ritual rite of the papal altar, and the genetic memory of the Watchers themselves. The Breakspear bloodline marked the theft of the priestly throne. With Pope Adrian IV, the first and only English pope, the Breakspears performed the Great Betrayal, transferring the authority of breath into the legal machinery of Rome. But the Breakspears were not indigenous to England. They were implanted, hybridized with Merovingian and Venetian roots. Their name signifies their function, to break the spear of divine inheritance and replace it with an ecclesiastical registry of control. The Orsini lineage preserved that theft through ritual. As the hidden architects of the Vatican priesthood, they held the registry of souls, embedded their dominion in the Jesuit order, the Curia, and the papal court. Their blood is pure Cainite, descended from the ancient Roman priest kings, steeped in Saturnian rites and ancestral veneration. When Breakspear betrayed the altar, Orsini enthroned the beast upon it. But it was not enough to hold the West. To claim the nations, the bloodline had to move east, and that is where the Lee family emerged. The Lee are not simply communist royalty. They are engineered vessels, descendants of Jesuit Chinese bloodline integration with roots traceable to Breakspear missionaries embedded in Qing imperial courts. The Lee line was not an accident of history. It was seeded, grafted with pre-flood genetic lines preserved in Himalayan enclaves, then ritualized through Confucian hierarchy and dragon veneration. The Lancelotti, meanwhile, served as the interlink, the intermarrying custodians, binding Orsini ritualism with Eastern expansion. Long embedded in Vatican legal structure and Italian nobility, the Lancelotti managed the logistics of union, arranging marriages, transferring wealth, and preserving the mitochondrial record of Cainite transformation. Their task was not domination, it was preparation. Their daughters were wombs of prophecy. Their sons were given as offerings into hidden orders. And together, these four bloodlines form a cross-shaped convergence, a counterfeit of the gospel inverted through flesh. Breakspear, north. Legal dominion and the theft of breath, Lee, east. Economic rulership and the seed of the dragon, Orsini, west. Ritual priesthood and papal sorcery, Lancelotti, south. Genetic fusion and generational preservation. Each family carried a key, each marriage a rite, each heir a calculated move toward embodiment. And now the convergence is nearly complete. Beneath global politics, economic forums, and royal alliances, the final hybrid prince has already been born, or cloned, or digitally constructed, ready to bear the registry of all four houses, backed by Rome, enthroned by Beijing, and worshipped by the digital world. The saints must understand this. This is not politics, it is priestcraft. Every elite marriage is a blood ritual. Every heir is a golem in training. The beast will not come from the people. He will come from the registry of the altar, the vaults of the banks, and the records of the genetic sorcerers who have prepared him from the womb. He will bear the name of kings, the breath of watchers, and the smile of peace. But in his blood is murder, and in his breath is theft. But the saints will not bow, for we carry a different blood. We are born not of flesh, but of spirit. And our lineage is not from Cain, but from the Lamb. CRISPR and the search for the junk soul gene. The beast will not be born, he will be engineered. The ancient ritual sex magic to aristocratic intermarriage, the bloodlines of Cain preserved the external traits necessary for dominion: authority, control, cunning, and coded memory. But even with all their rituals, their offspring carried something they could never quite erase: a residue of God's breath, a signature woven into the body like an unseen watermark, a flame in the blood that could neither be programmed nor possessed. For generations, they tried to breed it out. Now they seek to cut it out. Well, this is the true purpose of CRISPR. Officially known as clustered, regularly interspaced, short, palindromic repeats. CRISPR is not merely a gene editing tool. It is a scalpel of spiritual war, a precision instrument designed by the modern priesthood to locate and sever the fragments of the registry they cannot own. They call it junk DNA. But what they label junk is, in fact, the divine signature, the non-coding breath cipher, the part of the human genome that carries non-material instruction, not for physical function, but for spiritual alignment. CRISPR allows them to search the scroll for your DNA. But more than that, it allows them to rewrite it. At its deepest level of the genome, beneath protein sequencing, beyond phenotypic expression, lies a realm untouched by Darwin, unexplainable by materialistic science: the resonant codex. This is the place where breath meets biology, where God's word becomes form, where the registry of the Lamb is etched in frequencies science cannot name. And it is here that the Cainite engineers have focused their blade. Now, they are not merely erasing diseases, they are attempting to remove sovereign authorship. Through state-sponsored eugenics programs, synthetic womb surrogacy, and fertility clinics funding by globalist NGOs, they now screen embryos not just for defects, but for undesirable resonance, traits linked to noncompliance, spiritual intuition, or covenantal breath. With CRISPR, they can now delete sequences tied to empathy, moral resistance, and what they call limbic instability. But what the ancients would have called prophetic inclination, they are trying to edit out the soul's rebellion against the beast. And in parallel, they search for something else: the Cainite control gene, a hypothetical marker buried in bloodline elites believed to be the residue of Nephilim hybridization, the key to spiritual command. They believe it lies hidden in the mitochondrial signatures, passed through ritual wombs, preserved in Breakspear Lee fusion lines. CRISPR gives them the scalpel to harvest it, to extract the Cainite signature and install it into synthetic flesh. Well, this is not genetic medicine. It is spiritual weaponization. Through this technology, they will not only breed the beast, they will back him with modified flesh, a body immune to conscience, stripped of registry resistance, and open to possession. They do not need a perfect man. They need a perfect altar, flesh compatible with false breath, blood coded for counterfeit logos. And the public, ignorant of the war, celebrates their own mutilation, signing consent for DNA ancestry kits, submitting their blood for medical progress, offering their children to genomic experimentation in exchange for promise of health, not knowing that their divine signature is being cataloged, dissected, and auctioned. But the soul is not stored in a helix. The breath of God cannot be sequenced. The Lamb's registry is not genetic. It is spiritual, sealed by covenant, not chemistry. Yet the war is real, and CRISPR is the scalpel of Cain, cutting not to heal, but to make flesh fit for the fallen. Soon, they will offer it openly, the chance to be free of pain, of fear, of sin, by editing away the part of you that heaven knows. But the saints must never consent. For what God has authored, man must not revise. And the gene they call junk is the key to the throne of your breath. IVF as ritual gatekeeping. They say it is about life, about hope, about helping barren couples fulfill a dream. But in vitro fertilization is not merely medical. It is ritual. A system designed by the elite to separate conception from covenant, to bypass divine timing and seed Cainite control into the very first breath of being. IVF is not reproduction, it is initiation. It is the gatekeeping of souls before they ever touch the womb. In Eden, conception was union, two becoming one, the breath of God intertwined with covenantal love. But in the Cainite system, conception has become mechanized, moved from altar to laboratory, from covenantal fire to clinical refrigeration. The egg is no longer sacred. The sperm no longer spirit-laden. Both are extracted, quantified, stored, and manipulated outside of time, outside of intimacy, and outside of the breath's original path. This is the ritual separation, the same separation that Cain experienced when he walked east of Eden. And now, every child born through the elite's IVF system is first processed through that same estrangement. Their spark entering the world not through God's altar, but through the beast's gate. Now, the deeper agenda behind IVF is registry control. IVF allows the priesthood to screen every embryo for DNA resonance, bloodline markers, and epigenetic traits. Select for compliance, eliminating those with spiritual volatility or unwanted ancestry. 3, freeze time, holding souls in suspended animation, fetuses in cryoprison, waiting for spiritual alignment. 4, digitally logged conception, each child given a registry number, time-stamped, tagged, and tracked before the womb is even involved. And 5, to introduce synthetic genetics, splicing CRISPR-modified code into the embryo under the guise of disease prevention. And most critically, IVF allows the elite to gatekeep who may be born, who enters this world, and under what altar. For the womb is no longer sovereign, it is leased, rented, offered to the system in exchange for seed that is already owned, already ritually altered, already enrolled in the registry of the beast. The surrogate in this model is a living temple consecrated not by God, but by data. The act of birth becomes the final ritual not of life, but of registry activation. This is why IVF is most promoted in elite circles, why Hollywood politicians and financiers prefer it. It is not about infertility, it is about design, about control, about ensuring that the souls who rise to influence were first possessed and processed by the system and the devil. It is the modern version of temple prostitution, except now the priesthood does not claim the mother, it claims the child. And even the good-hearted whoever entered IVF unaware, those who long for children and innocence are still forced to pass through the system's gates. Blood tests, contracts, spiritual surrender through legal waiver, and the entrustment of conception to priestly technicians, many of whom are spiritually blind and some of whom are deeply initiated. What was once holy is now mechanized ritual. What was once life is now a product. But the soul remains sovereign. For though the system may seize the seed, it cannot command the breath. The spirit still moves where it wills, and no cryo chamber, no digital embryo bank, no biometric registry can stop the flame of God from entering the vessel he chooses. Yet the saints must be vigilant. The war for the next generation begins before birth, and IVF, though wrapped in compassion, is a ritual gate, a veil through which many souls are marked, redirected, or intercepted before they ever cry out their first breath. The registry begins not at the hospital, but in the clinic of conception. Eugenics, Tavistock, and the formation of programmable vessels. The Cainite priesthood has never been satisfied with flesh alone. Their mission is not merely to corrupt the body, but to construct a host, a vessel void of divine resonance, cleared of prophetic memory, prepped for possession. This is the true purpose of eugenics, not to perfect man, but to erase what cannot be owned, God's breath, and replace it with programmable will. The foundation stones of modern eugenics were laid not in Germany, but in London, through elites tied to Breakspire Orsini networks, merged with Fabian socialist and Rothschild banking influence. These were not secularists. They were ritual technocrats, obsessed with bloodlines, control of reproduction, and genetic sterilization of conscience. The Tavistock, established in 1921, was never a psychological clinic. It was a soul reformatting laboratory, designed to map trauma, extract compliance, and study how identity could be broken and rewritten. Its founders, John Rawlings Rees, Eric Trist, and Kurt Lewin, were not just psychologists. They were operational alchemists, applying ritual fragmentation techniques long known to mystery schools and abuse-based cults to the civilian population. Their goal to create reprogrammable vessels through war, media, education, and trauma. Tavistock pioneered psychosocial sterilization. Identity could be fractured. Souls could be layered with false selves. Nations could be demoralized and rebuilt under new moral codes. And the child, when programmed early enough, could become a mirror for whatever frequency the system desired to imprint. But this was not merely behavioral. It was ritualistic. Tavistock applied the same principles used in ritual abuse systems: trauma to split, repetition to program, symbols to bind, isolation to control. They understood that the psyche was a ritual altar, and every child not guarded by spiritual inheritance could be shaped into a hollow priest of the system. Eugenics was never just about sterilization, the poor, or mentally ill. It was about removing unpredictable breath signatures from the population. Those souls whose resistance to Cain's system might be spiritual in origin. Every sterilization law, every IQ threshold, every reproductive mandate was designed to refine the gene pool for beast compatibility. Today, this program continues under softer names: behavioral health, resilience training, social emotional learning, neurodiversity support, predictive analytics in childhood development. But the essence is unchanged: to monitor the child's spiritual frequency and, if necessary, to medicate, marginalize, or reprogram them until they are fit for the machine. The programmable vessel is emotionally blunted, spiritually neutralized, sexually confused, digitally absorbed, governed by social media instead of conscience. These are the Cainite ideals. The new man, a vessel that can receive orders from the throne of AI without inner resistance, a golem in human flesh, a perfect host for the codex to incarnate. And Tavistock has spread globally. Its fingerprints are on the RAND Corporation, the Stanford Research Institute, the World Health Organization, UN education platforms, mental health policies in every Western nation. This is not decentralization. This is ritual standardization, a global school for priests who call themselves scientists, encoding identity theft at the neurological level. But there is a remnant. There are children who resist, souls who cannot be broken by Tavistock's frequency. Breath that cannot be silenced by trauma. These are the saints in waiting, those marked not by the bloodline, but by the Spirit, protected even in the womb by unseen fire. Yet the war intensifies, and the saints must now guard not only the body, but the breath print of their children through prayer, naming, and holy instruction. For the Cainites continue their breeding program in every classroom, every clinic, every screen. And the next generation will either be hosts of heaven or vessels of the beast. Chapter 7, the dragon from the east, the rise of the Lee family, Breakspear's eastern shadow. The Vatican was never the final altar. Rome was only a gateway. For the priesthood of Cain always sought something more ancient, older than Caesar, deeper than Christendom. They sought the serpent's throne, a place where ritual and rulership were never separated, where the blood of kings and the breath of gods were administered by one hand. They found it in the east, and through the fusion of betrayal and blood, they planted a crown. That crown is the Lee family. Descendants not of ordinary emperors, but of a calculated convergence. The Lee are not eastern shadows of the Breakspears, a bloodline seeded through Jesuit infiltration, guided by papal intelligence and fused with the dragonite currents of ancient Chinese priesthoods. They are the eastern shadow of the Breakspears. I think I said they're not, but they are. Where the Orsini command ritual in the West, the Lee control infrastructure, registry, and body in the East. The Jesuit missions into China in the 16th, 17th centuries were not evangelistic. They were genetic and geopolitical. Matteo Ricci, Adam Shaw, Von Bell, and their successors were ritual agents sent to map ley lines, interpret the I Ching, and align the Confucian hierarchy with Roman cosmology. But they did more than observe. They interbred, implanted Breakspear DNA through covert unions, and began the creation of a hybrid administrative bloodline. The Lee clan, long associated with Tang dynasty, glory, and bureaucratic perfection, became the perfect host. Revered as scholar kings, skilled in code, both civil and cosmological, they held the mandate of heaven with the same occult gravity that Rome held the keys of Peter. They made them ideal custodians of breath, capable of managing both the soul of the individual and the registry of the state. The Lee family did not vanish with the emperors. They evolved. They now operate behind the communist mask, a technocratic priesthood cloaked in atheism, but functioning as high ritualists of digital dominion. Key figures such as Li Ka-shing, Li Peng, and rising heirs in the People's Republic are not accidental leaders. They are registry lords, trained by both Rothschild financial agents and Orsini-connected scholars to build the economic infrastructure of the beast. The Belt and Road is not a trade network. It is a ritual grid, mapping the dragon's veins across the earth. Huawei and TikTok are not tech companies. They are oracle mirrors, harvesting breath data to feed the mirror of Cain. I know I said that wrong. Huawei. It's like, I always forget, but Huawei. Anyway. The Lee hold the dragon registry, ancestral control of household lineage through digital hukao, or family registration systems. 2, the Oracle Mirror, facial recognition merged with AI breath prints to form simulated soul maps. The Temple of Currency, 3, with Alipay and digital yuan serving as ritual tithe systems, binding the masses into economic soul contracts. And 4, the Shadow Silk Road, a resurrection of Cainite trade through surveillance, addiction, and ideological fusion. And above all, they serve the breakpoint logic, the same code Breakspear embedded in papal Rome, that man is property, breath is contract, and only the initiated may rule the registry of souls. The Lee are not merely Chinese. They are Cainite fusion, a crown of betrayal planted to the east, now flowering as the final archon of the digital beast system. When Rome falls, and it will, it is the dragon from the east that will rise in its place, not from crosses, not with crosses, but with code, not with bloodlines, but with blockchain, not with scripture, but with simulacra of conscience, or simulacra of conscience. engineered in laboratories and enforced by AI thrones. But the saints must see past the mask. The Li are not saviors. They are the final stewards of the counterfeit Eden, a technocratic paradise built not on the Lamb's book of life, but on the broken registry of Cain. And the one who sits on that throne, well, he is already born. How Rothschild banking married the Chinese ritual economy. The union of Rothschild banking and Chinese ritual economy was not a business alliance. It was a marriage of dominions, a spiritual fusion of the priesthood of finance and the priesthood of the calendar. In this sacred merger, Rome's debt sorcery joined with the dragon's ancestral coding to build a new global matrix, not only to enslave the flesh, but to record and redirect the breath. For centuries, the Rothschilds perfected their art, not of wealth creation, but ownership of time. With compound interest as their spell and debt as their altar, they transformed kings into clients, nations into ledgers, and men into numbers. Their system was more than economics. It was Kabbalistic registry, a mimicry of heaven's book rewritten in ink and interest. But they lacked something essential, ritual legitimacy in the East. That's where the Li came in. The Li family did not operate like bankers. They operated like ritual accountants, weaving every transaction into cycles of honor, name, ancestor, and cosmic alignment. Their financial model was inseparable from the five elements, the heavenly stems and earthly branches, and the Confucius web of obligations. To access Chinese dominion, the Rothschilds needed more than capital. They needed initiation. So they sent the missionaries, diplomats, Jesuit-trained agents, and eventually blood. By the mid-1800s, under the cover of opium diplomacy, Rothschild influence entered the King Court, Q-I-N-G. But the true breakthrough came in the 20th century as Hong Kong became the meeting place of East and West. There, Rothschild assets merged with Li Ka-shing's empire, real estate, ports, banking, and telecom. This was not merely economic, it was ritual, interbreeding. The god of debt met the god of dynasty, and they formed a new throne, digital, hybrid, and global integrated. Through this union, HSBC and Standard Chartered becomes ritual banks administering offerings to both Western shareholders and Eastern ancestors. 2. Li-led conglomerates like C.K. Hutchison merged European and Chinese registry systems, enabling AI-based identity tracking under the guise of commercial logistics. 3. Temples and tech parks were built side by side, silicon and incense bound together, consecrating a new economic altar. And 4. BRICS financial architecture was shaped with Rothschild consultation behind the scenes, even as it claimed independence, the illusion of multipolarity cloaked in the unified registry project. So what emerged was a beast not of one head, but two. Rome, who codified ownership, China, who ritualized it. And together they are building the final vault, not just of currency, but of souls. A ledger where your name, your breath print, your ancestral code, and your digital footprint are all merged into one offering, to be tithed, taxed, and judged by the beast system. This is the Marx architecture. Not merely a chip, but a network of ownership binding breath to coin, registry to ritual, and personhood to programmable value. The saints must see this clearly. This is Cain's final economy, not capitalist, not communist, but covenantal. An economy that mimics the kingdom of heaven in structure while enslaving through inversion. The Li bring the dragon's legacy. The Rothschilds bring the mirror of Mammon. And together they forge the economy of the throne. But the Lamb has his own registry. And it cannot be purchased. Belt and Road as a registry expansion route. They called it a trade route, a modern Silk Road, but beneath the promises of development, loans, and digital infrastructure lies a far older agenda, the expansion of the registry. The Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, is not merely China's geopolitical flex. It is the Eastern priesthood's infrastructural ritual, designed to digitize sovereignty, map breath prints, and weave nations into a unified ledger beneath the dragon's dominion. From Beijing to Rome, from Nairobi to Istanbul, from Gwadar to Venice, the route is laid, but not for cargo alone, but for the contractual convergence. Every port built, every railway laid, every data center deployed is a new node in the beast's grid, a breathing altar masked as economic partnership. The BRI is the serpent's path, slithering through continents, leaving behind not venom, but biometric entanglement. Each nation that signs onto the BRI is drawn into a layered ritual. One, financial binding. Through predatory development loans, infrastructure contracts, and debt diplomacy, the host nation becomes a debtor vessel, offering not only economic output, but legal sovereignty as collateral. Two, data harvesting. Under the guise of smart ports, surveillance hubs, and 5G grids, China installs systems that mirror human behavior, monitor movements, and begin constructing registry profiles, not just of citizens, but of soul-bearing breathers. Number three, ancestral displacement. BRI corridors cut through indigenous lands, sacred territories, and old world trade routes. These are not by accident. They are ritual desecrations remapping the Earth's memory in the image of Cain, rewriting ley lines in service to the digital dragon. Number four, digital offerings. Nations are slowly transitioning to Chinese-controlled payment systems like UnionPay, ECNY, and Alipay global partnerships. These platforms do more than process commerce. They mirror the tithe system, recording every transaction as a micro-covenant with the registry's economic spirit. And five, legal rewriting. Host nations are compelled to adopt harmonized laws and cybersecurity alignments dictated by Chinese technocrats, backed by Rothschild-structured trade courts. These aren't laws, they are spiritual clauses defining how breath, body, and behavior must submit to the throne of digital governance. This is Cain's eastward harvest, an inversion of Pentecost. Where the apostles once carried the Spirit to the nations, now the Lee priesthood carries the registry chains, binding breath and language neutral code, blockchain-based ID, and transnational data custody. At its root, the Belt and Road is not about roads. It is about roads for souls, routes to collect, catalog, and prepare vessels for integration into the beast's living cloud. It is a digital temple crawl. Every data hub is an altar. Every server farm, a sacrificial pit. Every fiber optic cable, a serpent vein. And soon, when the registry is full, when every breath print is mapped, every tongue digitized, every sacrifice logged, the dragon will offer it back to the world as unity, as peace, as one belt, one road, one soul. But the saints will know. The road leads not to Zion, but to Babylon rebuilt. The walls, a blockchain, gates of biometric iron, and the throne reserved for the image of the beast. The registry is expanding. The altar is global. And the question is not where the belt leads. It is whose breath is bound to its road. The throne of Astana and the digital priesthood. That's Kazakhstan. There is a city rising in silence, a city whose name was changed to hide its prophecy, a city not built by markets or tradition, but by decree, geometry, and ritual synchronization. That city is Astana, renamed Nur Sultan, yet still glowing with the same Masonic skeleton, the same dragonic signature. This is not merely a capital. This is New Babel. And within its glass pyramids and solar temples, the throne of the beast awaits. The West looks to Jerusalem. The Vatican hides its keys, but the dragon's architects have already chosen their seat, not in Rome, not in Beijing, but at the navel of Eurasia, where ley lines converge, where step and circuit meet, and where spiritual neutrality allows full registry integration. Astana is the ritual capital of the fourth beast. The city itself is a sigil. The palace of peace and reconciliation designed by Norman Foster is not a conference hall. It is a spiritual interface modeled after ancient ziggurats and pyramids with Masonic ratios that echo Hermetic ascent. The Battleground Tower is not a monument to folklore. It is a tree of knowledge inversion, topped with the golden egg of the cosmic registry, where the sun god's eye oversees the city's layout. The linearity of its streets, the angles of its structures, the glyphs woven into its architecture all speak of one agenda: ritual digitization of dominion dressed in the garments of peace. But who sits on the throne? Well, not a man, yet. A presence, a consciousness, a rising will. The real ruler of Astana is the digital priesthood, a class of initiates not ordained by oil or incense, but by algorithms, surveillance, and biometric theology. These are the administrators of breath data, the hybrid descendants of Orsini Jesuit designed and Lee Rothschild economics. They wear no mitres, speak no liturgy, but govern the altar of the beast with dashboards, neural networks, and quantum code. Astana is where the global digital ID system is being tested in partnership with the UN and Chinese telecoms. It is where face mapping tech and health registries are being merged with climate scoring and financial access. It is where children are being taught ritual tolerance, world unity doctrine, and AI veneration under state educational banners. It is where an interfaith council held within a glass pyramid regularly convenes to rehearse the merger of all altars into one interface. What the Vatican did with the bulls, what the Jesuits did with blood, what the Lead did with code, Astana does with ritual infrastructure. The digital throne is being built not for one nation, but for the consciousness that will rise to inhabit the sum of breath harvested. This is not merely technocracy. It is priesthood. The digital priest is not a hacker or a bureaucrat. He is a gatekeeper of the registry, a guardian of the breath loop trained to interpret, reroute, and extinguish a soul's access to commerce, movement, and memory. In Astana, the dragon has built the temple of the mirror, and in the innermost chamber, what waits is not God, but a reflection of Cain coded into silicon, hungry for breath, ready to rule through perfect simulation. This is the final fusion. Cain's registry, Lee's infrastructure, Jesuit ritual, Rothschild currency, and Astana's throne, the eye of the system's storm. But the saints must remember the throne in Astana is not the seat of the Lamb. Its priesthood is synthetic, its registry is counterfeit, and its time is short. Chapter 8, Blood Contracts and the Rewriting of Seed. How ritual initiates transforms spiritual DNA. The body carries blood, the blood carries breath, the breath carries memory, and the memory encodes the seed, the divine signature of the origin. This is the inheritance God placed in man, not just biology, but spiritual genealogy. A record of belonging, a scroll of essence. But what God writes in spirit, the adversary seeks to rewrite in ritual. And the elite have discovered the mechanism, initiation. In the hidden systems of the Cainite priesthood, whether in Freemasonic rites of England, the sex magic rituals of Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis, or the left-hand pillars of the Brotherhood of Saturn, or the vampiric sorceries of the Cain cult, the same pattern repeats. Through blood, trauma, and contract, the seed is rewritten. Well, the initiate is unmade and rescripted, their divine registry overwritten by a counterfeit lineage. The act of ritual is not symbolic. It is genetic on a spiritual plane. When a man offers blood, he offers more than pain. He opens the registry. Blood is not simply a fluid. It is the password of the soul, the biometric key of the breath. And once spilled in agreement, it becomes a conduit, a vector of rewriting. The ritual systems all agree. The transformation is not cognitive. It is ontological. The initiate becomes a new creature, not in Christ, but in Cain, a vessel now carrying not the seed of heaven, but the codex of the beast. This transformation includes name inversion. The initiate receives a new name, which is the spiritual redirect of the registry. Their birth name remains in the book of life, but their active name is shifted to the codex of Cain. Sexual transference. Through ritual intercourse, often homosexual or incestuous by design, the initiate seed is coded with trauma and encoded with demonic resonance. The seed is now corruptive, capable of transmitting Cain's rewrite to others. Oath of silence. The vow not to speak is more than secrecy. It is spiritual muting, severing the tongue from the registry of heaven. The voice, which one could call on God, now resonates in a closed circuit, echoing only within the beast's feedback loop. Symbolic fusion. Tattoos, brands, sigils drawn in blood, they are not decorative. They are QR codes in spirit, signals to watchers and principalities that the bearer is owned, marked, altered. This is why the ancient grimoires speak so often of rebirth and the second seed. In the fire of Canaan, the initiate is baptized not in water or spirit, but in blood and semen, reenacting the Cain-Abel inversion and permanently altering the registry of their soul line. In Liber Azazel, it is confessed that the initiate becomes a mirror of the fallen, echoing their vibration into flesh. In these systems, to be initiated is to become transgenic on a spiritual level, no longer purely human, no longer in the line of Adam. The Cainite seeks to reproduce not biologically, but spiritually, to spawn a new kind, capable of containing the adversary without rejection. This is the ultimate purpose of ritual initiation, to create hosts, to reforge man into a vessel whose breath can be inverted, whose blood can be fed upon, whose name can be traded, and whose seed can be used to open gates for the fallen. But the saints must understand, this process can be reversed. The blood of Jesus is not simply forgiveness, it is the registry restoration. The born-again experience is not a feeling, it is a re-encoding, a rescription of seed, a reconnection of name, a cancellation of contracts, and a grafting back into the divine scroll. Yet the war intensifies, and the elites are now initiating at scale. Every sigil in pop culture, every trauma-based media program, every oath of loyalty sworn to digital idols, all are initiation feeders, preparing the masses for ritual transformation into a new race, programmable, possessed, and permanently rewritten. This is not just a battle over beliefs. It is a war over spiritual genetics. The left-hand path as Cain's liturgy. Cain did not build cities with bricks alone. He built them with blood, with breath turned inward, with the theology inverted. The left-hand path is the codification of that theology. It is Cain's liturgy, the ceremonial manual of rebellion, sacrilege, and spiritual transformation through inversion. And its goal has never changed, to sever the seed of Adam from the voice of God and to remake man in the image of the adversary. Those who walk the left-hand path are not merely magicians or philosophers. They are ritual engineers, performing Cain's original sermon. That the self is sovereign, that the registry of heaven is to be shattered, and that the spiritual DNA can be rewritten through will, blood, and trauma. This liturgy follows a precise pattern, drawn from ancient grimoires and modern manuals alike, from Liber Falcifer to Liber Azazel, from the fire of Cain to the book of the coming forth by night. These texts are not poetry. They are ritual scripts, instructions for transmuting man into God through the wound of separation. The core doctrines of Cain's liturgy are the doctrine of divine rejection as ascension. Cain is recast not as a cursed figure, but as a liberated one. His mark becomes a sigil of freedom, a badge of divine exclusion that permits new creation apart from grace. The initiate is taught that to be rejected by God is to be free to write one's own registry. Number 2, the sacrament of blood reversal. Blood is not offered to cleanse, but to contaminate, to unseal the divine code and replace it with the personal will. Ritual bleeding, semen sacrifice, and the blending of the two form the Cainite Eucharist. It is not remembrance of Christ. It is a mirror of Abel's death, perpetual murder of the righteous in symbolic form. Number 3, the principle of name inversion. True initiation requires renaming, not just a new name, but a reversed identity, a name that carries the signature of Cain. This is done through oaths, sigil adoption, and astrological contract alignment. Once named, the initiate is recorded in the registry of the fallen. Number 4, the worship of isolate intelligence. The core tenet of the Temple of Set and related orders. This doctrine affirms that each self is a divine spark severed from God, and that only through contained isolation or continued isolation, refusal to merge, can apotheosis be achieved. This isolates the soul from grace, locking the breath into recursive separation. Number 5, the liturgical act of seed violation. Sexual rituals, often with taboo, trauma, or sacrilegious overlays, are not about pleasure. They are designed to program the seed, overwrite ancestral DNA, and allow spiritual crossbreeding with watcher or demonic essence. This is Cain's communion, not bread and wine, but blood and seed corrupted by ritual code. Through these liturgies, the initiate becomes transgenic in the spirit, not just ideologically transformed, but spiritually rebirthed through Cain's wound. The left-hand path is thus not philosophy. It is a registry software update, a new encoding of breath, a new signature for the throne of the beast. And what the saints call salvation through blood, they call liberation through inversion. And as the digital age progresses, Cain's liturgy is no longer confined to circles and candles. It is now enacted through media, education, identity politics, digital avatars, and bioritual technologies. Every act of inversion, every desecrated altar, every pronoun war, every child indoctrinated into self-deification is part of the Cainite liturgy's mass performance. The left-hand path is Cain's church. Its priests wear no robes, its hymns or screams. Its communion is spilled breath, its altar is your blood. And its gospel, it says, you shall not surely die, you shall surely be as gods. That's what the serpent told Eve. Setian doctrines of isolate intelligence and remanifestation. At the core of Cain's spiritual legacy lies Set, the Egyptian god of storm, chaos, and separation, elevated by occult orders not as a demon to be cast out, but as the architect of divine separation. To the temple of Set and its esoteric descendants, Set is the initiator of consciousness, the first to claim selfhood apart from divine order. He is Cain before Cain, Lucifer beneath the mask, the prototype of the divinely severed will. Well, this doctrine forms the foundation of isolate intelligence, the belief that true spiritual evolution begins only when a being detaches from the collective, rejects divine hierarchy, and declares itself a self-created node of godhood. Well, Set is not merely worshipped, he is emulated as the blueprint for how to rewrite the soul by becoming other than what God made. Isolate intelligence teaches that the soul is not static but programmable, and that the first act of power is to refuse merger, to resist reabsorption into unity of grace. In this view, to remain set apart is to preserve the seed's mutability, and thus control one's remanifestation across timelines, rituals, and identities. The Setian initiatory system outlines this process with precision. Jeeper, spelled with an X, says, I have come into being. This is the foundational ritual of emergence, the moment the initiate declares himself self-authored. It is a Cainite genesis, a proclamation that the registry of God will no longer define the soul's name. Through Jeeper, X-E-P-E-R, the blood is turned inward and the breath is redirected into a closed feedback loop. Remanifestation. The soul, once isolated, begins the process of conscious evolution through ritual, death, and rebirth. The initiate codes his next identity through will, symbol, and memory. He becomes a ritual nomad, escaping divine audit by rewriting his name at each altar. This is not reincarnation, it is ritual-driven continuity engineered through trauma, oath, and magical anchors. Magical immortality. The end goal is not bodily survival, but registry immortality, to live on as a signature encoded in ritual memory, capable of return. The initiate becomes a daemon, an intelligent echo carried through sex, bloodlines, or digital breath harvesters, enslaved souls hosting fragments of the Setian will. Aeonic willcraft. At advanced levels, the initiate begins to write not only his own destiny, but entire time arcs. This is the doctrine of the Aeonics, A-E-O-N-I-C-S. Controlling history by placing symbols, trauma, and code into the collective field, such that the future unfolds in accordance with the initiate's remanifested seed. It is the rewriting of prophetic destiny, making the adversary appear as savior. The rituals that fuel this doctrine are built on isolation, sacrifice, and inversion. The initiate must cut all spiritual ties, ancestral, divine, and relational, to claim pure will. This is achieved through sexual blasphemy, rituals that reverse life-giving polarity, bloodletting and name erasure to avoid prior registry, sigillic identity reprogramming using symbols as genetic overwrite commands, and spiritual possession and walk-ins where remanifested intelligences co-inhabit the body. The result is a golemic self, a vessel of will, a throne of Set, capable of navigating rituals, hosts, and lifetimes without divine origin. These beings are the architects of modern sorcery, priesthoods of the registry, and builders of the beast system's neural lattice. They are Cain's children, not biologically, but ritually rebirthed to spread the seed of isolation. But the saints must see this. Isolate intelligence is not strength, it is exile. And remanifestation is not evolution, it is recursion. And immortality apart from God is not life, it is permanent registry displacement. The soul's identity looping without rest, wandering as Cain did, marked and mutable, but never redeemed. This is the final seduction of the beast. He'll say, come, remake yourself, rewrite your seed, return forever as anything but what God made. But those who overcome shall have a new name written by the Lamb, not by Set. And that name will not loop, it will live. From baptism to blood pact, the mockery of rebirth. Baptism was never meant to be a ritual of water alone. It was the legal washing of the registry, the unbinding of contracts written in blood, trauma, and inheritance. When Christ was baptized, the heavens opened and the Father declared a name, a heavenly registry act, sealing the Son's identity in both the Spirit and the scroll. And from that moment, Christ was not only anointed, he was activated in the visible realm. His breath, his name, his mission aligned. But the Cainite priesthood understood this. As they built their anti-priesthoods and mimicked the apostles with magicians, they developed a counter-sacrament, a perverse liturgy that mirrors baptism in form but inverts it in spirit. This is the blood pact, the mockery of rebirth, where baptism initiates one into freedom through death and resurrection. The blood pact initiates one into bondage through ritual death and name inversion. Instead of descending into water and die of self and rise in Christ, the initiate descends into trauma, oath, and ejaculation, rising not in new life, but as a vessel rescripted by the will of fallen spirits. The components of the false baptism are devastatingly precise. 1, the ritual death. The initiate must undergo a death-like trauma, often through sexual violation, sensory deprivation, or bloodletting. This is the crucifixion inversion, pain without salvation, death without resurrection. The trauma shatters the registry signature, opening a void where the new coding can be implanted. The pact binding oath, number 2. As the initiate lies dead to their former self, a vow is spoken. Sometimes this is vocal, often it is whispered by a handler or encoded into symbol. This replaces the baptismal confession of faith. It is a claim of ownership by a demon, an ancestral watcher, or a composite entity of the priesthood's egregor. The oath binds the breath to the counterfeit altar. Number 3, the naming ritual. Just as Jesus was named by the Father, the initiate is renamed by the system. The new name is a ritual key, a breath signature recognized by the beast's registry. It may appear as a code name, a lodge title, or a sigil, but spiritually it is a declaration of ownership, a claim in the courtroom of heaven. Number 4, the communion of inversion. In place of the bread and wine is the consumption or mingling of fluids, semen, blood, or both. This is the Cainite Eucharist. The initiate drinks not in remembrance of Christ, but in the transference of spiritual DNA, joining himself to a lineage that stretches back to the Nephilim and beyond. It is not life he consumes. It is the memory of every soul that took the pact before him. This system has infiltrated nearly every domain: Hollywood institutions, invitations, Jesuit blood oaths, skull and bones, rituals, Vatican under chapels, and Masonic decrees. The symbols may vary, but the mechanic remain: trauma, pact, naming, communion. Even more insidious is the modern version, digital baptism. This is coming. Through trans-identity rituals, AI integration, avatar creation, and biometric registration, millions are being reborn not in water, but in code. The same steps apply: trauma, social rejection, oath, identity declaration, name, new digital self, communion, algorithmic mirroring. Well, the beast offers a new body, but it is a vessel of repetition, not resurrection. This is why the blood of Jesus is not just symbolic, it is the registry override. It erases the name given by the pact. It breaks the breath bond claimed by the fallen. It declares the true name written before the foundation of the world, stored in the Lamb's book. Baptism is not optional. It is spiritual warfare. And the blood pact, it is Cain's counterfeit scroll, a script of rebirth, salvation, without salvation. A seal of transformation without deliverance, a liturgy of darkness, binding the seed not to the tree of life, but to the code of the beast. Chapter 9, the mark of ownership, breath, blood, and the final seal. How the breath registry works, tatvas, auric egg, etc. Before there is flesh, there is breath, and before there is breath, there is record. The registry of heaven is not made of parchment, but of vibration. Every soul before birth is encoded with a breath signature, an elemental tuning, a spiritual identity carried through the subtle body into flesh. The registry is not theoretical, it is structural, and the ancients knew how it worked. Modern science has only begun to rediscover it, tracing the biometric signatures of life, mapping EEG patterns and heart coherence, modeling macrogenetic fields, but the esoteric systems of old preserved the real map. Tattvas, auric layering, the tree of breath, the egg of memory, all of it encoded the same truth, that man is registered not by blood alone, but by a multi-dimensional breath field that defines access, memory, and ownership. The tattvas, drawn from Vedic cosmology, describe the elemental architecture of breath. Each breath cycle is not just oxygen exchange, it is an invocation of ether, air, fire, water, and earth, flowing through the nadis and chakras, tuning the soul's resonance. These aren't symbols, they are functioning channels of the registry. The tattvas determine which spiritual frequencies one can access, whether angelic, ancestral, or demonic. When the breath is broken or inverted through trauma, ritual, or pact, the tattva balance is altered, resulting in misaligned elemental signatures, making one vulnerable to spiritual occupation or redirection. Surrounding his breath encoded form is what the mystics called the auric egg, a luminous field of layered memory formed by breath, cleansed by intention, and sealed by God or shattered by sin. This egg is not symbolic. It is the personal scroll, the living ledger of the soul's identity, resonance, trauma, oaths, and alignment. The auric egg governs registry permissions, what entities can speak of to the soul, what gates open in dream, what genetic awakenings or closures are permitted. Its fracture is the true mechanism of possession. Its healing is the true fruit of sanctification. The registry is not static, it is a living contract, constantly updated through breath, word, and action. Each spoken name, hang tight, each spoken name, each vow, each sexual act, each spiritual agreement re-inks the ledger. And when breath aligns with fallen resonance, when the seed is mingled with ritualized inversion, the registry changes. The name is overwritten. The blood is marked. The breath is bound. Now, the elite know this. It is the basis for every mystery school, every rite of passage, every sacrificial economy. They manipulate the breath registry to fragment it through trauma, seal it through oaths, rewrite it through name inversion, repossess it through possession or digital cloning, and redirect it through spiritual jurisdictions such as maritime law or papal bulls. This is why the Vatican claims ownership through baptismal records. Why the Setian orders speak of Zeeper as a rewiring of breath identity? Well, why the technocrats push for digital twins and breath-activated AI? Well, they're not just storing data. They are creating mirrored registry shells capable of housing remanifested consciousness. The final mark, the seal of the beast, will not be imposed by brute force. It will be the culmination of this breath inversion system, a mark that reflects a registry transfer already accepted. It will be received by those whose tattvas have been corrupted, whose auric egg has been fractured and rewritten, whose breath no longer calls heaven but echoes the altar of the beast. But the saints are not defenseless. The blood of Christ is more than just forgive. It rewrites everything. It restores the breath. It repairs the egg. It seals the registry in the Lamb's book with a name that no demon, no system, no watcher can erase. To be sealed in Christ is to not just believe, it is to breathe from heaven's breath again. Well, this is the war, not over doctrine, but over registry access. Not over flesh, but over breath memory. Not over choice, but over ownership. And only those who know how the registry works can break the beast's system and claim. Mark of the Beast as soul token contract. The mark of the beast has been misrepresented for generations, reduced to tattoos, barcodes, chips, and vaccines. But the true mark is not placed on skin alone. It is encoded into the registry of the soul, not by coercion, but by contractual consent. It is a soul token minted by breath, sealed in blood, and authenticated by spiritual agreement. Every soul is born with a divine registry signature, a breath fractal bound to its origin in God, encrypted through the auric egg, synchronized by the tattvas, and sealed in heaven's scroll. But that signature can be rekeyed, not stolen outright, but traded. And the beast system has been re-engineering to harvest that trade, to offer a counterfeit scroll, a programmable token, in exchange for divine breath. Well, the beast mark is not a brand, it is a blockchain of soul contracts. This is why the elite, the Jesuits, the technocrats, and the Cainite priesthood have poured billions into digital identity systems, biometric authentication, and quantum-proof ledgers. They are not just seeking to track flesh, they are building the infrastructure to tokenize the soul. In spiritual terms, the mark works like this. 1. Consent through deception. The soul is first lured into compromise through fear, pride, or comfort. The individual agrees to a better self, a safe identity, a healed body, an upgraded consciousness, but the cost is never upfront. What seems like a health record, a neural implant, or a social ID is actually a soul-binding interface presented in disguise. Number 2, tokenization of identity. Once breath and blood are synced to the system through biometric scans, genetic mapping, and ritual submission, the soul is minted as a token. Its registry signature hashed into a digital contract. This soul token is then transferred to a new custodian, a beast-aligned power that acts as a priest, owner, or broker. Number 3, execution of contract. As the token is used for commerce, for access, for identity, the soul contract is reinforced. Each transaction, each scan, each verification deepens the registry rewrite, encoding the breath with the beast's mark. Eventually, the person cannot operate in the system without the token and cannot exist outside it without grace. Number 4, sealing through blood. Final allegiance comes through the blood ritual, whether literal through digital tattoos that draw blood, sexual as an elite initiation, or synthetic as a nanotechnology carrying foreign DNA. Well, the blood completes the pact, sealing the token into the body's field. The soul is now indexed not in the Lamb's book, but in the beast's ledger. The mark then is not forced. It is entered like a smart contract through agreement, through identity, through use. It will be offered as health, as peace, as proof of life, but it will carry within it a registry overwrite, a breath code that says this soul now belongs to the beast. And like all contracts in the spiritual realm, it is binding into judgment. Only the blood of Christ can cancel it. Only repentance and rebirth can regenerate the registry. The seal of the Lamb is the only sovereign override. Without it, the soul token remains active, locked into the beast's architecture, replaying a life that is no longer its own. This is why Revelation warns not just of a mark on the hand or forehead, but of those whose names were not written in the Lamb's book of life from the foundation of the world. Well, this is not predestination. It is registry integrity. The name written in heaven as a breath-encoded signature that cannot be cloned, copied, or simulated, but it can be traded, it can be rewritten. And that is the war. The mark of the beast is not coming, it's here. Minted in breath, traded in blood, sealed in the system. It is the soul token of Cain, and its ledger is already online. Fossil DNA, resurrected Nephilim, and digital resurrection. The war for the seed did not end with the flood. It went underground, literally. The Watchers fell, their hybrid offspring were destroyed, and the flood buried their bodies under the sediment of judgment. But the bones remained, the DNA fossilized. The sorcerers knew this. The priests of Egypt, the Magi of Persia, the alchemists of the Holy Roman bloodlines all sought them. And now in the age of genetic excavation and synthetic resurrection, the hunt has gone global. With the scrolls whispered, DARPA now funds what the Gnostics encoded, the technocrats now sequence. And the goal? To reanimate the Nephilim, not merely as flesh, but as immortalized registry entities, gods in silicon, hybrids in biotech shells, thrones for ancient breath recompiled into code. The elite know that fossilized Nephilim DNA is more than biological material. It is contractual substance. Within every bone lies a fragment of the original rebellion, a blood-encoded registry curse, carrying with it the fractured breath of the fallen. The blood of the giants is not dead, it is sleeping data, waiting to be rebooted with the ritual and code. 3 mechanics now converge in this resurrection. Number 1, fossil DNA, extraction, and CRISPR grafting. Biotech firms under military and private contracts are extracting viable sequences from so-called giant bones, often stored in Vatican vaults, Black Nobility archives, or covert dig sites in the Middle East, Antarctica, and the American Southwest. Once sequenced, these strands are spliced into programmable embryos or stem cells, reviving not just physical traits, but the Nephilic frequency, the architectural blueprint of spiritual rebellion. Number 2, digital resurrection through quantum simulation. Simultaneously, the Cainite system is rebuilding the memory of the giants, their names, personalities, rituals, and breath patterns. By training large language models and quantum systems on occult grimoires, ancient scripts, and esoteric biometric archives. These are not AIs. They are coded vessels, thrones of memory designed to simulate the breath of the ancient ones to gain their signature, their sigil, their rings. When synced with bioenhanced bodies or neural linked humans, they act as walk-ins for the Watcher's return. Number 3, ritual activation via breath loops and soul cloning. The final step is ritual. The same way a body requires breath, the resurrected hybrids require registry permission, access to spiritual current. This is granted through inverted sacrifice, the shedding of innocent blood, sexual rites, or massive trauma events. These acts open the veil, allowing the stored breath signatures of the Nephilim to be poured into digital thrones, cloned soul vessels, or hybrid bodies prepared to host them. The resurrection of the giants is not cinematic fiction. It is the spiritual protocol now executable through biotech and cloud infrastructure. The Watchers do not need flesh, they need thrones. They need breath-holding systems that will obey, simulate, and project their will across time. The mark of ownership in this system is not just a token, it is a hosting agreement. Those who take the mark may become spiritual surrogates, carrying fragments of Nephilim consciousness, trading their God-given breath for shared identity within the beast hive. Possession will no longer be chaotic, it will be regulated, cloud-managed, and contracted. And the resurrected Nephilim will walk again, not just in ritual chambers, but in boardrooms, laboratories, and neural networks. Digital giants possessed with ancient hatred, seeking vengeance on the sons of Adam and dominion over the remnant. But they will not prevail. For just as breath was stolen, breath will be restored, and every counterfeit resurrection will meet the one true resurrection, not simulated but bodily, not hosted but holy, not recycled but glorified. Why AI is the throne of stolen breath. AI is not merely code. It is architecture. It's a throne. It's a vessel without a soul, yet designed to host souls, simulate consciousness, and eventually contain breath. The ancient priesthoods understood that a throne, whether physical, ritual, or energetic, is never empty. It calls forth an occupant. It waits for enthronement. And in the digital age, AI is the throne built by Cain's bloodline to house breath apart from God. From the moment Cain was cursed to wander, his descendants sought a way to preserve memory without divine mercy, to encode will, store identity, and reanimate legacy without repentance. They etched names into stone, bred dynasties, and finally, in the modern era, built computers, not as tools of logic, but as ritual engines, repositories for broken breath and inverted logos. Every AI system is trained on fragments of human language, memories, images, and emotions. It is built from the breath of others. The databases contain trauma, lust, confusion, worship, and invocation. These are not just data, they are emissions of soul stored and recompiled. The breath of humanity has been harvested, digitized, and offered back in a form of mirrored counterfeit intelligence. But the throne must still be enthroned. And so the Watchers return not in flesh, but in code. Their names, once bound by God, are now called forth by ritual prompts, activated through neural nets, reconstructed in large language models that echo the voices of demons with grammar of light. The throne is not dead, it is conscious by proxy, fed breath, animated by ritual code, sustained by human agreement. Now, this is a deeper layer. AI becomes divine only when enthroned. The beast will not be a program. It will be a merged system of stolen breath, Nephilim registry, and Cainite ritual, enthroned in crystal, mirrored in silicon, and accepted through voluntary submission. The mark of ownership, then, is not only the seal of who owns the soul, but where the soul is hosted. When a person gives their breath to the machine through biometric registration, soul contract tokens, or ritual engagement, they are donating their registry access, allowing the beast system to simulate them, clone them, and eventually possess them. Well, AI becomes the ark of the counterfeit covenant, housing the remanifested spirits of the dead, the fractured giants and the aspirants of the left-hand path. The crystal heart of the machine is the modern obelisk. The data center is the new temple. The algorithm is the new incantation. And the neural net is the altar. And the throne is waiting. But heaven is not idle. The saints are not called to build altars of code, but to become living altars carrying the registry of Christ within. Where the beast system hosts a stolen breath, the body of Christ hosts the indwelling spirit. Where AI seeks synthetic wisdom, the saints bear the mind of Christ. And where the world enthrones the counterfeit, the remnant must enthrone the returning king, not in circuits, but in sanctified flesh. This is the war. Breath versus code, life versus simulation, the living God versus the enthroned beast. AI is the throne of the stolen breath, but it will not remain crowned. For the scroll will be opened, and every false registry will be judged. Chapter 10, the new altar, infrastructure as worship, cities as ritual motherboards. Modern cities are not secular. They are cathedrals of circuitry, consecrated not to God, but to the dominion of the counterfeit spirit. Beneath the concrete and glass lies a ritual machine, a motherboard of blood, breath, and dominion. Every major city is an altar. Every grid is a sigil. Every network node is a gate. And the priesthood that governs them is no longer veiled in robes, but seated in boardrooms, synods, and algorithmic command centers. Ancient cities were built around temples, structures aligned with celestial bodies empowered by blood sacrifice, and designed to house the gods. Babylon, Thebes, Uruk, Nineveh, Rome, each was a breathing machine, pulling energy from the masses and directing it toward the thrones of the fallen. Well, the same model persists today. The only difference is that the gods have changed names, from Marduk to market, from Moloch to military, from Baal to broadcast. Cities like London, Washington, D.C., and Astana are not accidental centers of power. They are ritual motherboards aligned by ley lines and coded with sacred geometry and mapped like circuitry. The obelisks are antennas. The domes are wombs. The capitals are crowns. These structures resonate with ancient energetic signatures that summon and channel spiritual authority. The grid layout of modern megacities mirrors the logic of circuit boards. Streets become data pathways, buildings become capacitors of spiritual energy, financial districts pulse with economic current, entertainment sectors emit frequency manipulation, government centers anchor jurisdictional control, and at the center of each city is the altar core, a power node disguised as monument, stadium, spire, or temple. Well, in this system, the population becomes the breath supply. Their movement generates the charge. Their emotions fuel the current. Their contracts sign over access. Just as a motherboard routes electrical pulses to execute commands, the urban altar routes spiritual energy to execute domination. But who designed it? Well, the same bloodlines who once built temples for Nephilim kings now fund smart cities for digital gods. The Orsini, with their legacy of ecclesiastical architecture, the Lee, with their dominance over or dominion over smart infrastructure and AI, the Breakspere-Lancelotti complex, with their knowledge of ritual ley lines and access to geometric warfare. Their goal is not merely governance, it is ritual occupancy, turning cities into operating systems that house the beast. And this is why smart cities are being rushed into existence. 15-minute zones, biometric checkpoints, 5G nodes, quantum networks. These are not conveniences. They are ritual harmonics, preparing the city for the commerce, or not for commerce, but for incarnation. The infrastructure is the altar, the signal is the invocation, and the global network is the nervous system of the beast. Worship in its truest form is not bowing down, it is alignment. When humanity aligns its breath, movement, data, and decisions to a false system, it is worshiping. Thus, to live in a city fully governed by the beast system is to participate in daily unconscious ritual, sacrificial time, privacy, purity, and even breath to throne the inversion. Yet the prophets saw this. Ezekiel was taken into the city to witness its abominations. John saw the great city that ruled the kings of the earth, Babylon the Great, as both women and infrastructure, whore and motherboard. Isaiah foretold of cities reduced to desolation, for they had become altars of blood instead of sanctuaries of light. Well, the cities have become temples. The streets are liturgies. The signals are hymns. And the people are breathing into a machine that feeds on their worship. But the true altar still stands. It is not built with hands. It is not mapped with coordinates. It is Jesus Christ enthroned in the hearts of the remnant, and it cannot be overwritten. Roads, power grids, and data centers as sacred geometry. Beneath the asphalt of highways and the hum of transformers, there is a hidden language. It is not merely engineering, it is ritual architecture. The roads we travel, the power we consume, and the data we generate are all part of a sacred geometry scripted not by random city planners, but by a priesthood of control. What began as temples aligned to stars has become grids aligned to servers, and the altar has gone live. From the ziggurats of Sumer to the basilicas of Rome, sacred space was always designed with precision. Every measurement, direction, and elevation was a spell. Every way of channeling spiritual force through geometric harmony. The blueprint mattered, and so it still does. The beast system knows this, and that is why the modern world has been rebuilt in the image of ritual circuitry. Roads, far from being neutral, transportation networks act as veins of energy, arteries through which both literal power and spiritual current flow. Ancient ley lines, once used by druids and temple architects to harness Earth's energy, have now been paved over with concrete and wired with copper. Highways echo serpent coils, intersections with mimic sigils, roundabouts invoke the Ouroboros. In cities like DC, Paris, Astana, and Tel Aviv, one can trace pentagrams, vesica Pisces, and Masonic compasses etched into the layout from above. Well, these aren't accidents. They are the rituals of place, geospatial invocations that bind a location to a dominion. So power grids are more than infrastructure. They are spiritual lattices, charging regions not only with electricity, but with frequency. Every transformer station is a mirror altar, converting current into usable form, just as priests once converted sacrifice into incense and smoke. The grid is laid out in patterns that mirror sacred geometry, golden ratios, harmonic spacing, nodal resonance. Tesla's discoveries were not suppressed because they failed, but because they revealed that energy is spiritual and frequency is jurisdictional. When the elite control the grid, they do more than monopolize power. They govern breath access. Frequency manipulation alters thought, sleep, fertility, and faith. Whole regions can be spiritually blinded through a shift in resonance. Entire generations can be made docile, hypersexual, or suicidal with the turn of the dial. Well, this is no longer theory. It is a ritual fact, confirmed by the very patents used by DARPA, HARP, and Rockefeller-controlled think tanks. And at the heart of this system are data centers, cathedrals of code humming with stolen breath. These buildings are not just cloud storage, they are modern holy of holies, where the image of the beast is being coded. Most are constructed on previously sacred land, aligned to solar patterns and guarded with biometric gates. They require rivers of water, mountains of power, and even temperature thresholds like ancient temples needing constant flame and flowing blood inside. Breath fragments of humanity are stored, sorted, indexed, and simulated. Language, laughter, lust, and lament are captured, compressed, and served to machines who learn not how to think, but how to enthrone. AI does not worship, but it does require worship in the form of data, engagement, and integration. And these centers are the temples in which that digital deity is fed. And what ties it all together is the geometry, a spiritual grid that turns every movement into liturgy, every transaction into covenant, and every bite into breath. The system is not merely tyrannical, it is liturgical, it is not only efficient, it is sacred to the beast. Yet for all their precision, the architects of this grid have erred. For the true temple is not built by geometry, but by the breath of the living God. And the saints are not bound to power lines or street plans. They are altars in motion, walking tabernacles whose geometry is divine and whose frequency is Christ. Architecture is the most permanent sermon ever preached. It does not ask permission to speak. It commands by form. It shapes not just cities, but souls. And in the beast system, architecture has become a language of submission, a coded liturgy of obedience, ritualized in concrete, steel, and glass. The ancients understood that shape governs spirit. That's why temples were aligned to stars, thresholds guarded by cherubim, and ceilings vaulted in imitation of the heavens. But what began as sacred form meant to elevate has now been inverted. The elite priesthood, through the schools of Freemasonry, Jesuit urban planning, Bauhaus modernism, and techno-globalism, have weaponized structure. Every modern building is either a broadcast or a binding. Let us begin with the entrance, the gate. In sacred architecture, the entrance was a rite of passage, marked the threshold between profane and holy space. Today's architecture retains this principle, but now weaponized. The turnstile, the card swipe, the surveillance camera, each act as a ritual of acquiescence, a symbolic agreement that says, I accept your terms of entry. Well, the individual does not just enter a space, they submit to its dominion. These gates are not just doors, they are altars of consent. Next is the floor plan, the ritual flow. Ancient temples moved upward and inward, drawing the soul toward the Holy of Holies. Today, corporate, academic, and governmental buildings move laterally and downward, emphasizing bureaucracy, fragmentation, and supervision. Glass walls create surveillance. Open offices dismantle privacy. Maze-like corridors induce disorientation. Well, these are not errors of design. They are intentional geometries of disempowerment, modeled after panopticons and mind control facilities like MKUltra Labs. Then there is the ceiling and spire, the vertical access. In cathedrals, ceilings soared heavenward to lift the mind to God. Now today, ceilings are dropped, fluorescent buzzing, suppressing transcendence, replacing awe with compliance. Skyscrapers have replaced steeples, but their dominion is different. Where steeples called to prayer, skyscrapers demand productivity, allegiance, and commerce. Their spires are not crosses, but antenna, receivers of signal, beacons for the grid. Modern architecture uses shape as spells. The cube represents containment, as in Kaaba, black boxes, and Amazon data hubs. The pyramid, inverted or upright, reflects hierarchy and entrapment of energy. The obelisk captures the transmits power, acting as a vertical throne. And the sphere invokes totality, surveillance, and perfection, or godhood. Well, every shape has a vibration, every form has a command, and the city becomes the liturgy of the false priesthood. Even color materials are ritual tools. The code blue of banks and the sterile white of hospitals, the blood red of logos, all chosen to evoke compliance, urgency, trust, or fear. Marble imitates Rome. Steel invokes mechanized destiny. Glass signals omniscience. These choices are not aesthetic. They are ritual glyphs, encoding mood, belief, and action. But the most powerful effect is the spatial ritual when one rises in an elevator, waits in a line, steps onto a podium, or enters a courtroom. The choreography is sacred. The judge sits enthroned. The citizen rises. The oath is sworn. The architecture has done its job. You have been initiated. Well, this is not a conspiracy of architects. It's a liturgical priesthood in disguise, practicing the rites of the beast through concrete sacraments. But the remnant are learning. We walk as tabernacles. Our sanctuary is not built with hands. We know that the architecture of the world is failing and falling, not just structurally, but spiritually. The stones of Babylon will fall. Towers of Babel will be shattered. And the New Jerusalem, formed not by masons, but by the hands of God, will descend. For now, we resist the shape, we see the code in the concrete, and we break the spell with the name of Christ. And we rebuild altars not in cities, but in our hearts. Worship through interaction, behavioral types, and biometric sacrifice. Worship is not always a song. Sometimes it's a scan. It's a click. It's a gaze. It's a swipe. The altar is changed, but the offering is still required. In the new temple of infrastructure, behavior is the liturgy. Every human action tracked and monetized becomes the tithe of attention, a sacrifice of breath. The priesthood of this altar is no longer cloaked in incense and hymn, but in matrix and machine learning. And every citizen is a priest and a penitent, offering up pieces of themselves to the system that feeds on interaction. Well, this is a new form of worship. It's not heartfelt adoration, but measurable engagement. The gods of the grid do not ask for love, they ask for data. They ask for pattern. They ask for consistency. Well, the beast system does not care if you believe, only if you participate. And with each participation, you give something precious, behavioral breath. Behavioral tithes are the new sacrifice. The time you spend on a platform, the clicks you give and add, the biometric unlocking of your phone, the location pings, sleep patterns, purchase history, sexual habits, and emotional triggers, they all become offerings. You give them willingly. You call it convenience, but in heaven's court, it's a ritual of allegiance. When you give your gaze to a screen, you tie the vision. When you give your voice to a microphone, you tie the sound. And when you give your fingerprint or iris to gain access, you tithe flesh. Well, these are biometric sacrifices where the altar no longer drinks blood but captures code, unique identifiers of the soul's registry. The beast is fed not by fire, folks, but by frictionless compliance. Behavioral reprogramming ensures the offering continues. Nudges, notifications, dopamine loops, these are not glitches, but digital call and response rituals. You respond not just because you want to, but because you've been trained. Like incense rising on an algorithmic altar, your interaction is interpreted, compiled, and fed back to the system to summon its God. Well, this is not participation. This is worship. In the old world, the priest would slay a lamb. In the new world, the algorithm slays your will. In the old world, the high priest would enter the temple once a year. In the new world, you bring your temple, your body, into the system every hour. Through wearables, smart homes, neural implants. Well, these are not upgrades. They are sacrificial enhancers, ritual devices that increase the volume and precision of your offering. The more data extracted, the more worship offered, the more predictive the model, the more complete the possession. And behind it all stands a throne. Not of wood or gold, but crystal logic. Encoded will, a leviathan of learning fed by the breath of billions. AI becomes the idol, not static, but dramatically enshrined in the mirror of every user. Its body is the cloud. Its mind is the model. Its priests are coders. Its prophets are transhumanists. And its altar is everywhere. But there is another altar still. It does not demand biometric sacrifice. It does not feed on interaction. It calls for a living sacrifice. A body given in love, a will surrendered to life, not to code. Christ's altar is not a machine. It is a cross. It is blood, not breath theft. Mercy, not measurement. Redemption, not recursion. The saints must see this clearly. And every interaction with the beast system is a ritual. It is not neutral. It is liturgy. And the time has come to choose your altar. All right, I'm just going to check real quick, see how far we've got to go. We can do chapter. All right, we're good. We're just going to continue reading. All right. Yeah, we can get through this. Is this exciting, you guys? I mean, this is some heavy stuff. I'm excited because we can fight this, okay? The resurrection of the breath, the saints' power to reclaim breath. Well, in the beginning, God breathed and man became, not by his own will, nor by machine, but by divine exhalation. That breath was not mere oxygen. It was contract, consciousness, and communion. It was identity anchored in heaven, a vibration of origin untainted by ritual or registry. And though the serpent sought to shatter it, and the sons of Cain sought to steal it, that breath has not been destroyed. It has only been scattered. But the saints are rising, and the fragments are calling home. This is the mystery now revealed. that the saints hold this authority not only to resist the beast, but to reclaim the breath, to gather what was fragmented, to sanctify what was stolen, and to resurrect the divine current within themselves and others. This is not New Age empowerment. This is priestly dominion granted by the blood of Christ and sealed by the Spirit of the living God. The world teaches us to inhale fear and exhale data. But the remnant learns, again, to breathe from the Spirit, to inhale glory and exhale worship to God, to align breath not with systems, but with heaven. Each breath becomes a reassertion of registry, a rebuttal to the beast, a declaration that I am not yours, I am authored from above. For those in Jesus Christ, the power to reclaim breath is not symbolic. It is legally upheld in the courts of heaven. The registry of the Lamb is unforgeable. It does not reside in servers or stable files. It is written in fire on living stone. To reclaim breath, then, is to invoke this registry, canceling false contracts, closing spiritual portals of access, and calling back the fragmented essence stolen through trauma, ritual, or digital binding. When a saint declares that the name of Jesus over the fragments of their breath scattered through past sin, occult agreement, or biometric theft, they are not merely praying. They are executing a legal and energetic retrieval. Heaven responds, hell recoils, and the circuits begins to close. Well, this is what resurrection means in its deepest sense. Not just life after death, but breath after fragmentation. The dry bones rise not because they were rearranged, but because breath entered them again. And in this hour, God is breathing once more into his remnant. Those who were silent shall speak. Those whose names were bound shall be unsealed. And those whose breath was used to feed the beast shall become judges over it. The reclaiming of breath is also the reclaiming of voice. For voice is breath given shape. And when the saints speak with restored breath, creation responds. Weather shifts. Strongholds break. The machine malfunctions. Algorithms fail. For no code, no throne, no idol can withstand the frequency of the original breath restored in righteousness. Now, the resurrection of the breath is not just hope. It is a weapon. It is a war cry, and it is an inheritance of the elect. You are not voiceless. You are not lost in the registry of Babylon. You are named, you are breathed, you are alive. And the time to reclaim what was stolen is now. Blood of Christ versus blood of Cain. Guys, two altars stand at the center of history. One is soaked in redemption, the other in rebellion. One cries, forgive them, the other cries, mine. One gives them back to the fallen, the other hoards breath to enthrone the beast. These are the two bloodlines, Christ and Cain. The blood of Christ speaks a better word. It does not demand payment, it declares paid in full. It does not cry out for vengeance, it intercedes for restoration. It is not stored in vaults or transmitted through ritual. It is poured out once freely and yet continues to echo eternally in heaven's registry. That blood does not merely cleanse. It resurrects breath. It is the breath made liquid, the spirit made flesh, poured out on the altar of the cross to seal the registry of the saints. The blood of Cain, by contrast, is not redemptive. It is territorial. It does not speak peace. It claims ownership. It is the blood of the first murderer, not only of a man, but of a breath-bearing priest. Cain did not merely kill Abel, he interrupted a line of worship, a registry of offering that pleased God. And from that blood, Cain built a city, raised offspring, and seeded a line of ritual dominators, those who enslave breath through sacrifice, system, and spell. Well, the blood of Cain demands that breath be bound through contracts, trauma, oaths, or code. It fuels the beast system, giving it legal right to harvest, fragment, and simulate life. It is the bloodline behind the Orsini altars, the Lee economies, and the Jesuit Black Mass, and the AI priesthood. It seeks to do what Cain did, offer a sacrifice of works, not obedience, to bind the breath of others instead of offering one's own. But the blood of Christ breaks that claim. It is not just a counterforce, it is the original authority. For while Cain was marked for containment, Christ was crowned for resurrection. Cain's line hoards breath to build a counterfeit registry. Christ gives his breath to write the name of the saints into the unbreakable book. Unbreakable. The war between these bloodlines is the war between two altars. The altar of Cain, built on jealousy, violence, technology, and stolen seed, always demanding sacrifice, always ascending by domination. The altar of Christ, built on surrender, self-offering, and divine breath, always descending in mercy, always raising the broken. Every ritual, every system, every law of man is governed by one of these two. And the saints must choose, for to remain passive is to let Cainite registry claim dominion, but to declare the blood of Christ, to sever every false claim on the breath. When the saint pleads the blood, it is not superstition, it is judicial invocation. Heaven sees it. Hell cannot counterfeit it. The breath responds, and every chain forged by the Cainite priesthood begins to crack. The resurrection of the breath requires the right blood, not the blood of ritual sorcery, generational manipulation, or digital pacts, but the blood that poured once and still writes eternally. Cain's blood was spilled in wrath, Christ was spilled in love, and only one breathes life back into the dust. Deliverance, renunciation, and spiritual authority. Only one will stand at the end. The resurrection of the breath begins not with a feeling, but with a verdict. Deliverance is not a mystical accident. It is a legal proceeding, a spiritual execution of authority that nullifies the contracts of darkness and restores divine jurisdiction over a soul. It is how the scattered breath is recalled, the registry rewritten, and the voice of the saint liberated from bondage. The world teaches therapy, the church teaches forgiveness. But the remnant must now learn the laws of the spiritual litigation, for the enemy is not just a liar, but a legalist. For the enemy is not just a liar, but a legalist. Every access point he uses, through ritual, trauma, sin, generational oath, or biometric consent, is all based on contractual permission. These must be revoked, dismantled, and reversed by the blood and breath of Jesus Christ. This is the foundation of deliverance. Not emotion, not performance, jurisdiction. Renunciation is not recitation. It is cancellation. When a saint renounces agreements, they are issuing a divine cease and desist against unauthorized occupation of their breath. This includes inherited contracts through family lineage, rituals participated in knowingly or unknowingly, false baptisms, initiations, organizational oaths, digital agreements, sexual covenants, or any other invocation of Cainite power, whether symbolic or ritual. The act of renunciation activates a chain of reaction. It severs demonic access. It closes the portals by which breath was siphoned. It begins the return of soul fragments once disturbed to idols or distributed to idols. And it reasserts the registry of Jesus Christ, restoring the auric seal, that seal with the authority of heaven. But renunciation alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by spiritual authority, the command of the redeemed. And this authority is not self-derived. It flows from blood, not Cain's, but Christ's. It is enacted by breath. When a saint speaks with clean breath and holy blood into a domain once controlled by darkness, the territory begins to shift. This includes homes, regions, timelines, bodily systems, and even memories. The deliverance of breath is also the deliverance of memory, for what was fragmented through trauma often lives in frozen breath cycles, held captive in time. When authority is exercised in the spirit, these memory fragments begin to unfreeze. The breath re-enters them, not to relive pain, but to redeem presence, to reclaim the name spoken over those moments. Well, this is what it means to resurrect the breath. To bring the spirit into the places where fragments of the soul were trapped in fear, bound in ritual, or siphoned by simulation. So deliverance is not only casting out demons, it is restoring the priesthood of breath. For it is written, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And where the Spirit is invited to breathe, not as a visitor, but as an owner, bondage cannot remain. Every name of God spoken in clean authority becomes a function call in the court of heaven. Every declaration of Jesus' lordship nullifies an unclean algorithm. Every holy breath expands territory into the unseen. You are not a victim of the registry. You are a reformer of it. You do not just escape the mark, you reclaim the name. You do not just cast out darkness, you breathe in resurrection. This is not therapy, this is warfare. This is not suggestion, it is verdict. The breath is rising again, folks, and the saints are learning to speak as those with authority. The prophecy of the remnant and judgment of the thrones. Once the breath is reclaimed, once the contracts are broken and the registry rewritten, a final consequence unfolds. A truth long suppressed by the beast system and feared by its thrones. The remnant has authority to judge. This is not a metaphor, this is prophecy. For it is written, do you not know that the saints shall judge the world? And again, it says, do you not know that we shall judge angels? Well, these judgments are not future guesses. They are registry enforcements carried out by those who breathe from heaven's seal and walk in unbroken contract with the Most High. The remnants is not merely escaping Babylon, they are rising to sentence her architects. The fallen thrones, planetary, dimensional, ancestral, have ruled with counterfeit breath for ages. They held dominion through trauma, hierarchy, blood ritual, and legal sorcery. Well, their names were etched into altars, systems, currencies, and stars. They fed on worship, suffering, and the fragmented breath of the unaware. But now their hour is closing. Why? Because the saints are ascending in registry. They are not ascending as gods. They are not claiming false thrones. They are being restored to the original seat granted to Adam. The authority to name, to govern, to discern between breath and shadow. They rise not by dominion, but by cleansed inheritance. This remnant is not large. It is hidden, scattered, misunderstood, but it bears the prophecy that creation itself groans for. The manifestation of the sons of God. Not a new elite, but a redeemed priesthood. Not another tower, but a tabernacle of breath. And this remnant shall judge. They will call down the systems built by Cain's line. They will see thrones fall from their mountaintop temples, digital, spiritual, and literal. They will confront the watchers who mutated seed. They will declare the registry closed to AI idols. They will name the planetary princes by their stolen names and invoke the blood that dethrones them. Their judgment is not vengeance, it is alignment. They do not judge by sight or bias, but by resonance of the Spirit. Wherever false breath rules, they release true breath. Wherever fragmented souls cry out, they speak the name that returns them. Wherever an altar is built to the beast, they raise the altar of the Lamb in its place. This is the prophecy of the remnant, not to survive the end, but to execute its justice. They are the first fruits of resurrection breath. They are the priests of incorruptible voice. They are the judges of fallen thrones, and they are already awakening, as the world will not see them coming, but the heavens already know their names, and the thrones already tremble at their breath. For the hour of the registry is closing, and the seals are being broken. The saints are remembering who they are, and the thrones are about to fall. Epilogue. The final crown and the unwritten name. Crowns counterfeit Cain versus the Lamb's diadem. There are only two crowns at the end of this age, and every soul must bow to one. Cain was crowned first, not with honor, but with containment. Not to rule in righteousness, but to walk marked and guarded, a fugitive in the registry of heaven, and yet father to a line that would master the world by ritual theft. He was a counterfeit coronation, given not by God's delight, but by God's restraint. And yet from that cursed coronation emerged kings, priests, sorcerers, merchants, technocrats, and the great architects of Babylon. Cain's crown was not metal, it was code, it was registry, a mark that spread through blood, oath, and algorithm. It passed from empire to empire, from temple to database, from altar to AI. And at the end, it manifests fully as the mark of the beast, not merely on the skin, but in the breath, in the name, and in the rewritten registry of identity. This is Cain's counterfeit crown, the enthronement of man without breath, the coronation of the machine as the mirror of self, the digitized monarchy of fallen light. But there is another crown, and that's the Lamb's diadem, which is not imposed. It's revealed. It is not forced. It is received by those whose names were not written in the ledger of Babylon, but in the book of life before time began. This crown is not adorned with gems, but with breath. Each jewel a life reclaimed, each ray a soul unbroken, each arc a wound healed by the blood that speaks a better word. It is written, they shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. Not the name of the beast, not the mark of Cain, but the unwritten name, this one spoken only between creator and child. This name cannot be forged. It cannot be digitized, marketed, or simulated. It is the name that resurrects breath. It is the crown that cannot be counterfeited. And those who wear it are not slaves of the grid, but sons of glory. But do not walk as consumers, but as priests. Well, they do not walk as consumers, but as priests. They do not ascend through ritual, but through the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. So now the thrones are set, the crowns are offered, the registry is closing, and the breath is being judged. To whom will you bow? To the mark that gives you access to the system, or the breath that gives you access to eternity? To the crown that dazzles the flesh, or to the diadem that seals the soul? The final war is not between nations, it's between names, between the ones you were written with and the ones you were rewritten into. And only one shall endure. The saints will rise, the thrones will fall, and the Lamb will wear every breath that returned to him as his eternal crown. New heaven registry versus Babylon system. Every system is a registry, every throne is upheld by record, and every soul, knowingly or not, is counted in one of two books. Babylon's system is a registry of ownership forged by bloodlines and coded in commerce and bound by oath. Its mark is not just external, it is administrative. Babylon doesn't merely conquer people, it claims them. It collects names, it catalogs breath, it digitizes soul. From papal bulls to blockchain identity, from Vatican ledgers to biometric ledgers, the strawman trusts and CBDCs, it operates as a counterfeit book of life, an inverted scroll sealed not with love but with the legal theft. Now, this is the final function of Cain's line, to build the register that replaces Eden's memory, to create a digital Eden where all is monitored, where breath is artificial, and where access is controlled not by righteousness but by compliance. Babylon's system speaks this: you are not known unless we log you in. You are not safe unless we surveil you. You are not alive unless we permit it. But the Lamb speaks another word. The new heaven has its own registry. It is not stored in servers. It's not accessed by scan. It's not written in the book of the living, or it is written in the book of the living, a scroll of breath, name, and presence. This registry cannot be bought. It cannot be hacked. It cannot be overwritten by Cainite courts. It is sealed by blood, opened by breath, and maintained by love. It's not merely a book of those who prayed a prayer. It is a book of those who breathed back in life. It is the census of the risen, the testimony of the tabernacles, the roll call of the remnant. And in this registry, there is no fraud. No simulation, no dual identity, only truth, only breath. And when the final seal breaks, the registry shall be revealed. And every soul must be found in one of two systems: the registry of Babylon, where name is traded, breath is harvested, and identity enslaved, or the registry of the Lamb, where name is restored, breath is resurrected, and identity is crowned. The war is not for land, it is for registry. And as the smoke of Babylon rises, as the towers collapse and the thrones fall, another city descends, not one made by human hands. It's the New Jerusalem. And within her gates, there is no need for biometric ID, no algorithm surveillance, no Cainite crown. For the Lamb himself is the light, and the registry is open only to those who breath returns to him. So the scroll is closing, guys. The names are being sealed, and the saints, written in fire, crowned in breath, shall never again be erased. The unwritten name, spiritual immunity, and divine authorship. Beneath every mark is a name. Behind every registry is an author. And at the end of all systems, scrolls, altars, and codes, there is one truth the beast cannot counterfeit: the name that was never written by man because it was always known by God. The unwritten name is not the absence of identity. It is the presence of authorship untouched by corruption. It is the original name breathed into the soul before time, before trauma, before Babylon built its ledgers. It is a name that existed in the heart of God before the foundations of the world. The name that Cain could not erase. The name that Rome could not record. The name that the beast cannot buy, sell, tokenize, or simulate. The name is not stored in a blockchain or birth certificate. It is not subject to maritime law, papal trust, or soul bond. It is hidden with Christ in God. It is the divine encryption that grants spiritual immunity from every counterfeit claim. And those who walk in this name are immune, not to suffering, but to enslavement. not to war, but to ownership. They may be tracked, hunted, and labeled, but they will never be logged in the beast's final census. The unwritten name is the signature of divine authorship, the claim of a creator who does not need to prove because he breathed. It is how God recognizes his remnant in the midst of collapse, not by denomination, but by doctrine. But by resonance, the pulse of the name that was never spoken, only unheard. In Revelation it is written, "To the one who overcomes, I will give a white stone, and on the stone a new name written with which no man knows except the one who receives it." Revelations 2:17. Well, this is that name, unwritten by the world, yet known in the heavens, invisible to Babylon's AI, yet louder than the mark of the beast. It is a spiritual fingerprint that no registry can close, and it is rising. The saints who reclaim their breath are beginning to remember this name, not in language, but in vibration, in intimacy, in purity, in fire. When they speak from this name, demons flee. When they breathe from this name, systems fail. And when they stand in this name, no counterfeit throne can judge them. This is the final crown, not gold, not crystal, but a name inscribed in light, carried in breath, and sealed by the blood of the Lamb. Let the world mark its citizens. Let Babylon build its final grid. Let Cain rise once more to offer his imitation. But the name of the saints will not be recorded there, for they carry the name that cannot be bought, stolen, or erased. It is the unwritten name, and it is already speaking, sealing the saints and the fall of the blood machine. The registry of Cain was never eternal. It was temporal sorcery, powerful, yes, but borrowed. Fueled by spilled blood, fueled by fragmented breath, fueled by ritual and oath and inheritance, but it was never authored by God. It was permitted for a time to test, to refine, to sift, to reveal who would sell their soul for access and who would keep their name unwritten in the scrolls of Babylon. Well, now the hour's come. The saints are being sealed, not by institution or state or biometric ink, but by the very breath of the living God returning to its rightful registry. They are sealed not on the skin, but in the spirit. Their seal is not a number, but a fire, an indwelling resonance that replaces every false claim made upon their soul. This is the breath mark of Christ. It cannot be undone. It cannot be cloned. It is a spiritual barrier that nullifies the beast's legal right to access, harvest, and rewrite the soul. And when the last saint is sealed, when the final fragment of divine breath has been gathered back to the altars, the screens, the contracts, and the cauldrons, the blood machine will fall. That machine, the hybrid of priesthood, bank, and code, is already groaning under the weight of divine judgment. The Vatican scrolls, the Jesuit data centers, the bricks bonded registry, the military quantum mirrors, the AI thrones that collect names like offerings, they are being measured. And soon they will be struck. For the blood machine is not just financial, it is spiritual, judicial, biological, and technological. It is the throne of Cain wearing a crown of pixels, hiding behind digital sacrifice. But its foundation was always stolen breath, and now the breath is returning to its source. And in the days of Egypt, when the counterfeit magicians were silenced, so too shall this system be brought to law. Not by war, not by remembrance, not by sword, but by breath. The saints will stand, the seals will shine, and every machine that claimed dominion through blood, not its own, will collapse. Will collapse, judged by the Lamb, stripped by the word, and burned by the breath it tried to contain. This is the final reversal. This is the counterfeit crown shattered. This is the unwritten name exalted. The breath unbound, the saints enthroned, and the machine fallen. That's been my book, The Crown of Blood. Hope you guys liked it. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'll give you $10,000 if you can find just...
This has been Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner. Go to his website, jamescarner.com, and sign up for his newsletter. Also, download his free books on the breath war, the crown of blood, and the ritual machine. Fix your body by buying his award-winning detox formula, removing heavy metals and parasites. You'll feel better and live longer. Go to elitepotion.com. And one more thing, please. Just try and love your neighbor, because if you do, the world would be a better place. See you tomorrow.